Hi there. Thought I'd take a couple moments here to go over moving heads and some of the tweaks and how to import them. Uh, I'm no expert on moving heads. I only got a couple little DJ lights just so I can practice it with it. So that being said, there may be some incorrections here or problems here. I'm still going to make the video. If you have any thoughts, comments, corrections, please put them in the comments in the video. I just want to quickly go through some of the things we're seeing on the Zoom room. First of all, just start with the moving head themselves. I'm assuming you're going to get an import of the model from the moving head vendor that you've got or from whoever you're purchasing through this. Otherwise, you're going to have to look through the manual to come up with the information to put in for your moving head. The critical ones are the channel for the pan, channel for the tilt, channel for the dimmer, and channel for the shutter. The shutter on value is at what value does the shutter have to be open? So anything greater than 1. And when it is open, what value do we send to that DMX channel 255? So this is for my particular lamp. I know there's lots of different configurations out there. So be sure and have it set for your particular moving head. Now, I want to go through these types of, I guess we call them groups, but they're not really groups. They're really a single strand effect. This is one technique that's very common in a couple of vendor sequences. And just want to make sure that you're getting it right. You're understanding what's going on. They are set up to be the number of strings corresponds to the number of moving heads you have. So in this case, I have 6 on my screen. Then you would set it up to be use start channel, individual start channel. And then when you do individual start channel, you can get the triple dots here. And what you're going to do is go start of model, moving head 1, and then what channel is, in this case, dimmer. It's 8, so it'd be 8 up there. So that's how, and now after you've done the 1, you could cut and paste and do all the rest. And so moving head 1 and 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, they're all channel 8 because that is the dimmer, channel 8. The other thing that you can't miss is to come down to string properties. Make sure it's set to single color. I have it set to single color white. That seems to work. It may work for red or whatever, but I just use white. So very similar to that is moving head pan, exact same technique, 6 strings, i.e. 6 individual ports, individual moving heads. Then it's moving head 1, channel 1, which is my pan channel, moving head 2, channel 1, which is my pan channel, etc., all the way to 6. Shutter, same thing, except it's channel 7, and my tilt is channel 3. Now, I put 6 on here. I would recommend that you probably put 8 or 6 or whatever your favorite vendor, sequence vendor is using. Put them all in here, even if you don't have that many, because when you import the sequences, you really want to see the whole experience, the whole effect on all 6 or 8 moving heads. And you may choose that you want to use the center 2 if you've got 2 moving heads, or you may want to use the center 4 if you've got 4. You may want to use the left 4, the right 4. It may vary throughout the sequence which 4 or which 2 or which 6 you want to use. So I would recommend bringing in all 6 into your sequence. You don't have to have them all physically. You don't have to own them. You don't need to put them on the visualizer, but you should have them in your sequence. That would be my recommendation. So let's get started here with just a few things in the sequencer on how to handle this. First of all, I would start with just dropping a DMX effect right on your moving head 1. All right. So moving head 1, DMX effect. Make sure that your pan is working, right? So move the slider, pan is working, right? Looks good. Tilt, make sure that's working. Yep, looks good. Dimmer, that means turning on the light. Oh, I don't have a dimmer. That's because my shutter is not open. So let's open the shutter. So I'm just going to put that all the way across. And now I've got control of the dimmer. All right. So that means xLights is configured correctly for this moving head. Doesn't necessarily mean that you have the right channels for your actual moving head. You won't know that until you do output the lights. And then ideally, if you've got a moving head available to you, you would do output the lights and you repeat this exact same test. Do the pan, the tilt, the color, the shutter, and the dimmer, and make sure that output the lights works. That tells you you've got the right channels and everything defined properly. There's lots of other choices here. Of course, they vary by moving head. Quite frankly, the sequencers are normally just using pan, tilt, and shutter. and dimmer. And quite often shutter is not even included because that might be a one-time thing that you have to do at the beginning of the night, turning on the shutter, i.e. turning on the lamp. So that may not be included in your sequences. Very seldom have we seen gobo select. Very seldom have we seen color wheel because some people have LEDs, some people have color wheels. They don't often put them in the sequences. All right, so that's just plain old DMX effect, verifying that your moving head works. Let's assume it does, and we'll move on to this technique. Now, there's a couple of different techniques for sequencing, but I'm going to go through this technique where you have the shutter, the pan, the tilt, and dimmers in this, what we're calling groups, but they're not really groups, but we'll call them a group for lack of a better word. You'll find that they might put a single DMX effect on the shutter, for example, where it opens up all the shutters 255 because we need them open for the whole duration of the sequence. So you see how it's done? They might have one DMX effect like that. And let me reiterate here, when you're looking at these effects, channels 1 through 6 are not really channels 1 through 6. They're actually moving head 1, moving head 2, moving head 3, 4, 5, and 6. So ignore the word channel. And you know what? Never use the remap channel. In this technique with moving head, pan, shutter, tilt, do not use remap channels. It's not what you want to use. It's not really, these are not really channels. These are really moving heads. In fact, if I went back to, we're on the moving head shutter. If I went back to the layout and go to moving head shutter, you could go down here and strand node names, click on that guy, and you could just say moving head 1, moving head 2, and I'm just going to skip ahead for the sake of the video, moving head 6. Then you come back to the sequencer, click on that, and now you've got nice labels, so you're not going to get confused. It's actually moving head 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. All right, so that's your shutter. We know that for in my particular moving head, the shutter has to be open for the duration of the sequence. Let's look at the pan. I'm going to stare over here in the static because that's simpler to follow. So clicking on the static for moving head pan, moving head 1 is going to be panned to 50. Moving head pan is 55, 60, 65, 70. And you can see that they're slightly different. This guy's pointing a little more towards the left side of the house. This one's pointing a little more towards the back of the house. So those are different pan values. And I can see how those are just static values. So that's a very simple pan DMX effect. Again, on moving heads 1 through 6, they are not channels. A little more complex version of a pan effect is a moving pan. So we look at this DMX. It's again on this moving head pan strand group, if we want to call it. And what they've done is, what they could have done is put a value curve. So normally you have a single value on a slider, which I just showed you. This with a value curve, if I click on it, you got to click on it twice. It says that the value that we're sending that effect is going to change over the duration of the time. It's going to start at 30, the lower end. It's going to go up to 60 in the middle, and then back down to 30. So it's just like we're moving that slider from 30 all the way up to 60 and then back down to 30. And hit the value curve one more time and it should lock in. So it's just like you're just changing that slider as the effect is running 30, 60, 30. So they've just copied this on all 6 moving heads. And so that is a static one. We have the tilt. Let's look at the tilt. Very similar. Again, moving heads 1 through 6, all set to 50. So I'm going to do the tilt pointing. It's always pointed tilting up at 50. Those are static values of 50. Again, 1 through 6 is moving head 1 through 6. Dimmers is what actually turns the light on. Often we'll see them use an on effect rather than a DMX effect, because an on effect is essentially going to send the same value to every channel, every moving head, rather than having to put 50, 50, 50 or 99, 99, 99. You can just drop an on effect. So an on effect is going to change the value. It's similar to a value curve, in fact. It's going to change it from 0 to a 100. So it's 0, it's off, and during the duration of this on effect, it goes up to 100. So on and off, then on, off, then on. Panning, locking in the tilt. So there's the steps. You have a shutter, turned it on, a pan that's going to move it, a tilt that's going to get it tilted in the right side of the sky, and the dimmer is actually going to make the light on and off. We have nothing at all on the moving heads 1 through 6. It's all done on these 1, 2, 3, 4 different line items. Nothing on the moving heads themselves. This is just one technique that's being used. Not to say that you couldn't override it by putting a DMX effect on here, but that would be, that'd be a little a little overcomplicating it. Maybe this one moving head 3 is going to do one thing, and its whole mission is to just stare up in the middle of the sky. So I'm going to put that shutter and dimmer. He is just going to do one thing, and that's all he's going to do. He's going to do his own little thing. There you go. I'm going to delete that. And I'm going to look at what people see is often they'll have, when they import a sequences, they're pointing in the wrong direction because the sequence vendor always has it started to the right and yours starts to the bottom. You want to add something to every value. A neat little technique we've seen, and I can't honestly say that I can prove it, but it seems to work, is to add an effect on top of the moving head pan. So I did an add layer and I added this on effect above it. Now the trick is to go to layer blending. Let me go to layer blending. It's this one, layer blending. It's set to additive. So that on effect is set to additive. That's critical here. So I'm going to move that over. So what that means is going to take the value from here and add it to all of the values in the pan. So all of these DMX values, 50, 55, 60, 65, it's going to add to those. So it's basically going to shift them around. So notice how they're shifted to the right, and that on effect is controlled by the brightness. Is that a cool trick or what? So if I say I want to add 70, well, it's not really 70% or 70 values. I don't even know what, it's a fraction, but you can control how much you want to add to get them to the right direction for your house. If you know that at this point, if I put it to 0, there's nothing being added. You know that the sequencer wanted him to point to the right. You can come over here to brightness and just add a little bit, right? And boom, there it is, 49. Let's go 50 because that's a nice even number. You've essentially altered that sequence that you purchased and imported it and said, he has it wanting going to the right, but the way my heads are located on my house, they're actually pointing to the left. I need to add so much to get it to the right direction. So just by adding that simple one effect across, and you would probably do it across your whole sequence, you want to add 50 and you've moved it. So if I go back here to static, you see where they are. If I double click, and then I'm going to add to it, you see, same thing, but now it's over to the right just by adding that one effect. And I think I've done another example here. There's the additive right out front. So just changing to point out front just by controlling the brightness. Just one little interesting little layer blending trick called additive. Now, the opposite of additive is subtractive, but it really depends on if you can subtract. If the value is really high, remember this is a value between 0 and 255, and you wanted to go the other way, you might have to do a subtract. So maybe you want to subtract 40 or 50. But in my case, I know looking at my pan, these values are already quite low. I don't think I want to subtract. I suppose I could say subtract 10 from every one, and maybe that would work for me. But either additive or subtract, whichever one is working for your particular layout. Maybe you've got the heads pointed towards the back of your house, etc. That could do that. I want one other trick I want to show you, and that has to do with how to set a minimum. And discard changes here. So if I was to draw my thing, if you have your house and your head is sitting up here at the peak, you do not want it to shine right down here. That would be too low. Maybe it'd be right near, your neighbor's house. You want to set the minimum to be this. There's a neat little trick to do for that. I'll show you that right here. So using basically the same techniques as before, but here we've got the tilting. So we're going to tilt and go really low. It's basically going a value curve from 20 or 30 down to 0, back to 30. But perhaps that's too low. Maybe we don't want that to happen. You see in the sequencers, they often put a homing DMX. So this would be the minimum value. So when there's nothing, let me clear that display. clear all. So the DMX effect is from here to here. We have the tilt, but what happens when there's nothing defined? Well, that's when this guy kicks in. This guy says, you know what? Don't go back down to the home position, which might be 0, but go to something in between that's maybe at 40, so that it's never pointing down at the ground. Set's basically a home position, so that could be used for that. But then one extra technique that you can use is the minimum technique. So similar to what we showed on the previous slides, we have the tilt effect, the tilt, and we have the home position. But now I've added yet another layer, which would be like a minimum value. So we don't want that value of the tilt to ever go so low that it may shine in my neighbor's house. So let's look at that. We have a minimum value set to 20. So the value of the tilt will never go below 20. And that is done by putting in this 20 across all of the moving heads. This is our home position. So 40, that means whenever there's not a DMX effect, like right in between, it'll go to 40. Now, what if this DMX effect tells it to go to 0? Well, if I click on it, or first of all, on this one, the trick here is max, M-A-X, max. So that means it's going to take the maximum value between the 40 and the 20. And of course, the 40 would win. So therefore, it would return 40. So it'll do 40 for your tilt here. Now, again, for this one, we're going to do max. So if this guy says to go to 0, then it's going to say, no, I'm going to go to the max. So I'm going to go 0 or the home or the minimum. So in this case, it's going to go to the 40. Actually, I don't think I like that. I think I want to switch these around now that I'm thinking about it in this video. So I would probably get rid of the home position or move it down one layer, because I want the max to between this and this. So it's going to be either the 0 or the 20. So we want it to show up to be 20. That's what we want. We can't do the homing position on this one. I would have to do a DMX 40 in here for when the so when there's empty, I'm going to have to put a 40 in there. I have to think about that one. May have to do an update or a comment on this video, because I think we'd want to do something like this. So if this asks for a 0 value, it will not get it, because this guy will say, nope, the minimum value we can get is 20. So we'll notice that the lights notice how the lights just come above horizontal. And if I go over to this one, you'll see that they actually go quite low below my horizon. So they're potentially going right in my neighbor's upper windows. Whereas now we're using the max, it'll never get that low on the horizon, and it'll stay up above safe values. So that's just another interesting technique. Hope those helped you out. Again, if you have any comments or suggestions on this one, it's still a work in progress, but feel free to leave them in the comments below. By the way, don't forget to subscribe to this channel. We're trying to put as many helpful tips from the Zoom room to make life easier for you with xLights. So anyway, have a great day. See you in the Zoom room.